Hello, everyone, and welcome to Writers and Books Visiting Writers Series. My name is Dan Hurd, and I'm the Director of Adult Programs. Writers and Books is a nonprofit literary arts center in Rochester, New York. We offer readings, workshops, and literary programming for all ages, all currently online. For more information, you can see our website at wab.org. Thank you for joining us tonight. In 1991, the poet Frank X. Walker coined the term Affrilachian to refer to African Americans living in Appalachia. Affrilachian is an ever-evolving cultural landscape poised to render the invisible visible. It embraces a multicultural spectrum of people who consider Appalachia home. We're very happy to have two Affrilachian poets with us tonight. Makalani Bandele is a resident of Lexington, Kentucky, an Affrilachian poet and Cave Canem Fellow. The recipient of fellowships from Kentucky Arts Council, Millay Colony, and Vermont Studio Center, his book, Under the Aegis of a Winged Mind, was selected by Cornelius Eady for the 2019 Autumn House Press Poetry Prize. His work has been published in several anthologies and widely in print and online journals. The poems in Under the Aegis of a Winged Mind are inspired by the life of the jazz composer and pianist Earl Bud Powell, a leading figure in the development of jazz, who also faced struggles with police brutality, harassment, drug and alcohol abuse, and mental illness. Joy Priest's work has appeared among elsewhere in ESPN, Gulf Coast, Mississippi Review, The Rumpus, Virginia Quarterly Review, and Best New Poets 2014, 2016, and 2019. Joy has facilitated poetry workshops with incarcerated juvenile and adult women and has taught writing, comedy, and African American arts and culture at the university level. Her debut collection, Horsepower, received the 2019 Donald Hall Prize for Poetry from AWP. We'll hear from both of them. We'll read, and then they'll both be in conversation with Takia C. Graham. Takia is an award-winning English professor at a local community college where she teaches literature, composition, and creative writing courses. She is also a writer, activist, and community steward who uses her various platforms as gathering spaces for Blackness and all of its multi-layered expressions. Both Makalani and Joy's books are available at our bookstore, Ampersand Books. I'll put the link in the chat. I also want to say Makalani will be also doing a creative writing workshop on Saturday. I'll put that link as well. But to everyone, thank you for being here. And I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. So we'll start with Makalani.
Good evening, everyone. Really excited to be here. Thank you to Dan Hurd, Writers and Books, to Ampersand Books. Thank you to Joy and Takia for joining me this evening. Just really excited to read poems with my Affrilachian sister, Joy. And as well as my fellow Louisvillian. So I'm gonna read a couple of poems, a few poems from my new collection, Under the Aegis of a Winged Mind. And then I'm gonna read some new stuff. First poem I wanna read from the collection is a poem entitled Scary Meds. Bud Powell, the great jazz pianist and composer, had a great deal of trauma and strife in his life. He dealt with mental illness and part of the book of the collection, series of the poems, chapter of the book is dedicated to his experiences in mental institutions primarily. And so this poem, Scary Meds, is one of those poems from that section of the book. The moon is an uncareful scythe out there. The negotiables reverted to non and put some stank on themselves, it's detergent. Interim of maestros got your hands around your throat in the process of pinpointing. Jackpot blows up. There are several words for it. Not found, lapse, barely hemisphere, technically. Eyes like mean shades. Cheek the fit pills. And cancel rows of faces, mouths, cloud in the process. Hello, Mr. Powell. Are you in there? Not really sure. Anapestic larynx. Den of disjuncture. Derangement is a whirring, oscillating ache of every little inkling framelessly. Technically, they put you in a box for an instrument you'd never think was inaccessible. Days don't add up to real numbers, spending so much energy in conversation with yourselves. Then the change event in many tabular forms. Technically, what choice would you give up for a piece of intuition, regularity, some affection? Reply to the question, where are you? Takes forever and ever in real-time drool. Wake up in the middle of the night with leg cramps from the 6th of hell. A handful of hair. So being a jazz musician, Powell had his influences in a number of different genres of music, classical music, popular music of the time, which have been probably something like Charles Joplin. So the first part of the book is about the influences that Powell had. So I'm going to read some poems that deal with influences from Thelonious Monk and Art Tatum and Mary Lou Williams. So the first poem, Earl of Harlem meets the High Priest of Bebop. Earl of Harlem was a nickname that was given to Powell, and High Priest of Bebop was a nickname given to Thelonious Monk. Thelonious Monk was known for wearing many hats, and thus kind of the conceit for this poem. Earl of Harlem meets the High Priest of Bebop. Dig that hat rakishly tilted to the bank. You that cat with them hats. Scooch over some. Put your Bailey on and play a while. All hat and expert prelude makes you deadly, felonious mob as art music. Is you is or is you ain't. A bowler full of many minds decorating space with time. Snuck a half pint of whiskey in here under his fez. Hat trick. Asian canonical hat tricks you into thinking you're jungle and grown enough to slick mouth Gigi. But it also could have been that whiskey. Now, where can I find an unpredictable helmet across Pinnacle? Or a temple of fedora with upshot uptown? That your herringbone trilby I swiped in the foyer? My bad, but that brim was stingy as a club owner, but not as crooked as a record label. Felt hat versus cop's baton. Who you think won that one? That's one cap my skull could never fill. Of pork pie hats, angry drunk. Hat of hopefully not too much dark hope cooking in a spoon in a nook cooking in a nook, the hallway from Lucretia's cold water flat where rent party people dance the ceiling for lack of room on the floor. Can I have some of that sombrero? Can I borrow that ironclad yarmulke that escaped from labor camp? Can I hold your bamboo hat for a lark? Do I play too fast in this beret with a piano pen? Urbane Lid says scores about a man, a few words like chords. That cat is a distant hat for miles of nothing but arpeggios. Bruh, the newsboy cat says it all. So Mary Lou Williams is an African-American woman jazz composer and pianist, and supremely influential in Powell's career and in his life. So this is Mary Lou Williams' piano workshop after Fred Moten. Epigraph: there is then a real and special influence of woman. Anna Julia Cooper, voice from the South. Where you brought new ideas if you were thinking them. A woman's place is in her heart and fingers, rolling through intervals of instantaneous opus, like sardonic eyes, tired of the excuses. No kitten on the keys. She liked the way she diddy-bop. Her cut of a cute ear like cloud frame in window all late night. The way the conversation went array and early into the afternoon the next day. Baby, y'all's cords are screwy and need a screwdriver from her manufacturer. So Mary ate a music school. Hits and bits from the tips like a teacher getting her lessons together in a vase of bright yellow begonias. Chicken frying, pot of aughts on the stove, only the coldest cold water cornbread. Their uninvited, open invitation to come up to hers like an open room, like an advent. They're arriving with voyage and sound metamorphosis. Everybody on the white shag carpet continued with one accord in experimentation, and prolific phraseology was reconnaissance. Enrolled in her supposititious search for her interior paramour. What freedom of movement. What to be moving felt like, chord to chord, Kinston to St. Albans, 8th Avenue Express. Where she was going wasn't there before she left. She made it up as she went along. Yet it's quite another thing to carry a stave around with you wherever you go. From her flat was launched 1,000 styles. This next poem it speaks to Art Tatum, another great pianist. Many argue that Art Tatum is possibly the greatest piano player technically of the 20th century. His technique was easily, by far concert level, of the highest caliber of concert pianists, classical, jazz, you name it. This poem is Ghost of the Piano. They said for the sake of the insurance money that jazz was dead, that the poor child's wails waking them in the middle of the night was not a Baroque left-handed figure. The penthouse and everything in it were Senorita's inheritance from a murderer and rapist. Like other captains of industry, that's how he'd acquired something to pass down. His portrait in a khaki field uniform and black leather jackboots hung above the petite Rodin and menaced Ida till the end of her days. The first time she saw it, she could not find the notes to sing for a month of Sundays. When Ida started working for Senorita, the piano would suddenly and inexplicably break out in Dvorak's Humoresque in the middle of the Tiger Rag, as if, by God, God was playing and not this apparition of a fat black man. One fat Tuesday, Willie the Lion pushed the damn thing out the 25th floor cathedral window after random keys played dead and broke his stride. The ground below became an embittered coral sea of shards and pieces of mostly stained glass, mahogany, steel wire, iron, felt, various other woods and metals. Skinny-legged, little brown-skinned girls danced around the kaleidoscopic catastrophe and picked up the tiniest colors and ate them or saved them to make bracelets. The family heirloom lay there for days in hundreds of pieces, but still warbled at night. Eventually, they scrapped the metal and burned the remains and all its august hammers. The soul of Arch Tatum's fingers fled in the heavy sustain of smoke. The ashes were used to fertilize the hydrangea, peonies, and jasmine. The air in the courtyard, even to this day, smells a bit of stale Pabst Blue Ribbon beer. That reference to Pabst Blue Ribbon beer at the end of the poem. Tatum was known for drinking voluminous pitchers of Pabst Blue Ribbon beer, just insane amounts of beer. Like people would try to count how many pitchers he would drink, and they would inevitably lose count over the course of the night. Once again, I want to thank you guys for this opportunity to read. I just want to read a real short poem. I think I'm running up on my time, and this should close me out. I'm working on a new manuscript, sending it out for publication, tentatively called The Vandals of Knox City. And it's made up of, consists of, all the poems are this prose poem form I created called the unit. And it's, to make it simple, it's trying to imitate free jazz. So the way that I compose the poems, I'm trying to give the feel of free jazz. So there is a lot of parataxis, a lot of non sequitur. As much as free jazz sounds like noise, I'm trying to see what kind of noise can be created in a poem. So it's a prose poem form. There's 16 sentences, and let's see, Unit 62. The corridor is a place of concentrated energy. You're forced deeper into passage or forced back out the way you came in. Got a little something for you under the table. The islands from Charleston, south, the abandoned rice fields along the rivers for 30 miles back from the sea, and the country bordering the St. Johns River, Florida, are reserved and set apart for the settlement of the Negroes now made free by the acts of war and the proclamation of the President of the United States. Never leave things out of your perspective of the world that are crucial to your iteration. He not mesoformic like that, he just big boned it. Can it be that it was all so simple then? A collection of heartache in the eyes, gutter snipe, not trying to catch a case out here because your head too big to fit anywhere. The day hides from the hills before it heads for them. That's the way empire crumbles into a pile of our eyeballs. You got to come up in here with that simple passage to feel the energetic force of all this corridor. I'm saying, what's the sense of going elsewhere? We seek reprieve from those afraid of our edges. Mayday, mayday, the little narcissists need iPhones. Stat. Do you read me? Once again, thank you again for your attention and your ears. Looking forward to hearing Joy. Knock it out, sis.
I guess I'm just gonna start. We're just moving along to me. All right. Well, thank you so much, Makalani, for originally inviting me to read with you and let me share the space with you and all that. I'm just constantly. I've been reading through the book since I got it a few weeks ago, and I'm just reminded always of like reading Makalani is like remembering like what all is possible, what all you can do as an artist, as a writer. It gives you permission, it reframes things, Makalani's work. So I think that what I've been thinking about as ekphrasis has sort of been reframed for me reading Makalani's work as like poetics, in the sense of making something from these disparate parts. And so I brought just a set of makings tonight, that poems that incorporate different parts, different kinds of arts. So like film ekphrasis, yes, but also a little word studies, multi-genre collaborations, and so forth. And I just wanted to honor Makalani's work in doing so. This poem I'm going to start out with is from the book Horsepower, and it is a part of a film ekphrasis series in the book, but it is also a word study, I would say, I guess. And this is Ode to Hush Puppy, after the film Beasts of the Southern Wild. And Hush Puppy, of course, was the protagonist of that film. Ode to Hush Puppy. Say here and it sound like a heel shoved down a throat, a horse hitched, guttural, tough meat yanked, bones crushed by teeth minted in gold. Sound like a 6th generation curse when it fly out your mouth, little God. A boat cracking crossfield laid flat beneath indigo clouds. You say, come back, hill. And you mean your daddy too. Mean we are so ancient. How long we done lived. Us folk, for whom heaven is live broadcast, are down at the hill place, filthy and barefoot. A double wide on stilts, a body to be burned if need be, cause already no fear, a fire in you, a sharp gill or heavy hand laid into your cheek. You've caught on early turning through cylinders of nature, root, rainfall to prey, making rubber tire, rusted scrap into playground, sun-bleached boats, fishnets are birds in your hand. There on the divine screen of poverty, ingenuity, beggars, alchemy, what we got into, what we ain't meant to have. We's who the earth is for, you squeak, and you sing two kinds of people, your daddy and you, those who stay and those who escape the hill. All right, so this next poem that I'm gonna play actually is a multi-genre collaboration I did with a painter, really like a multimedia artist, I would say, while I was a fellow at the Fine Arts Work Center this past season, from October to June. And this brother Johannes is originally out of North Carolina, and works a lot with a primary material that he uses is red clay. So this backdrop, you'll see this piece that he did. You'll see, you should be able to see that incorporated into the piece, but he just asked me to write something. I had like 24 hours to write something to go along with the piece. And we recorded it in his studio. He incorporated the audio into the piece and then shipped it off to Chicago. In that duck yellow Catalina, our hearts fluttered like tweeters. We sat between the elbows of men, behind us, a trunk full of speakers. Our uncle ciphered the block with no destination in mind, politicking with everyone, the street's sage monk speakers. Twice a day they stopped at the executive lounge, old men in dark glasses leaned drunk against speakers. We had dreams named after us there, too young to drink. We sat silent, swayed to the funk of the speakers. Back in the car, our uncles whistled at women, and we learned to read lips over the thump of the speakers. They stopped in alleys and parking lots, dropped their hands out the windows, doing business, selling junk to the tweakers. In the mornings, they jackhammered asphalt and red clay. In the evenings, still vibrating, they gathered, woofing like the subs of a speaker. In truth, they worked a gang of jobs. The union was their set. All they had to show was the rattle and jump of the speakers. Inside, our grandfathers played Trouble Man on repeat. Skillet cornbread crackled like torn lump speakers. Our mothers, home from work, called us in from outside. Their hair on our cheeks, the soft mesh that housed the bump of our speakers. All right, this next poem that I'm gonna read is another little word study. I've just been thinking a lot about, how just, like certain words that my elders would say growing up that I knew as one word and learned later in my adult life was actually like a word in Merriam-Webster's dictionary that had a complete different spelling than I had in mind and like meant something different than like just the connotative way I understood the word. So things like worrisome, like growing up, I would understand that as maybe like WORSE-EM, worrisome. And just knew that that meant like someone was being annoying as hell. And then as I got older, realized that the word was worrisome, WORRISOME, with sort of, like a similar definition, but worrisome, one that worries is worrisome, is always worrying about something, which of course we know is an annoying kind of energy. This poem takes on a different word like that. And this one is called Somebody's Bitter Elder. Somebody's bitter elder, while reminding us to focus on our studies, drifted into a grief monologue about his long gone beloved. Started to call on the God who goes around in ritual madness, soaking dark corners with a little lamp. He kept the porch light on, kept that ponytail, a sharp eye, a silk robe, and some house slippers, eating cheese from a knife, crooning along to the Eagles one of these nights. This was nothing new to us. His bitterness was a record she played to ruin during his year of discovery. He stayed getting lit. Then we stayed getting lectured about the implications of a word like discovery. Finally, late one evening on cue, he announced, anyway, I ain't studying her no more, which we knew meant he wasn't interested in her as a subject any longer. Didn't want to give her no more power and couldn't get no pussy from her no more neither. What we didn't know was he was saying studying, that even in speech, we'd had to devote attention to what had a hold of us, outpace discovery. That somewhere along the porchless way, meaning had adapted to the economy of two syllables. This other poem I'm gonna read was a poem that Makalani published a long time ago in like Toga Journal, I think, which is not with us anymore. So it was one of the first poems published from the book, and it's also the same type of form as the speaker poem I just read. In the city, rear-wheel drive cutting corners, rims rubbing through the city. Fishtail swinging, switching lanes, floating tub in the city. M4 extended barrel peeks out from beneath the seat. Shit, gotta stay above the mud in the city. Spit roll blunt sit cooling, and the swivel of air vent there for when it starts the tug of the city. Palm the finger waves, her face hidden in the sex of my lap. This how a king fall in love in the city. Family heir at age 12 when pops went to the grave, couldn't find my heart if they dug up the city. Mother shoot brown sugar into the rupture of vein. I live like this through the blood of the city. Stay glued to the rear view in a forever state of flight, a bad omen. I am the black dove of the city, not quite a fiend. Just sprinkle a little out the bag to do a few bumps just because in the city. Red bone rhythm, her first time breasts, only sound that ever drowned out the buzz of the city. Now the joy of her moan live ringing. I waste in LaGrange, forever reminiscing how it was in the city. A little autobiographical note, I actually wrote that poem for my first love when I was in undergrad and college, and he was in LaGrange Penitentiary, which is a prison in Kentucky. Ephemera, the payphone, which seems to no longer be with us. Where you at? I can't find it in the book either. Okay, the payphone. Disappear from the landscape, slick and black in the Tangerine Diner where I stood to speak into the handpiece, greasy with other people's oil and spit. Gone that day's newspaper boot printed. The dog walking itself leash in mouth down the small avenue, the bookstore, where I felt the train rumble pass on the other side of the wall, gone. Those old men I watched smoke at their stools. And the blood-sucking bug I smeared in sweat until it was only blood. I'm obsessed with what's phantom, the younger self, the angry and agile body starved and able to consume indiscriminately, the gently pumping vein. The operator had everyone's number at her fingertips back then. Who remembers the sensation of the rotary dial whirring backward? Who of us keeps the record now? Outside the gardens, the smartphones missed my back pocket, smacked the ground, gone, its face diamonded into uselessness. No way to get a hold of a way home. I hummed along while I waited. Across from the jukebox in the booth ripped from its button, scratching the back of my thigh, gone the wild weeds and honeysuckle air that made me the coin slip into its dark slot. All right, the last poem I'm gonna read is a brand new poem, like the latest poem I've written in like, I just like, oh no, where is it at? I just like brought this poem to workshop. So it's like brand new, but you know, I felt like it honored Makalani and what sort of like Makalani's aesthetics and interests, and you know, I thought I'd read it. I just go ahead and be vulnerable with it. All right, I'm gonna share my screen again so y'all can read it along with me because it's kind of a visual piece too. I've been teaching myself the bass. Like I've owned a bass guitar for like several years, but I only like really started to like devote like meditative attention to it while I was at the fellowship, and I didn't have any distractions. And so while I was learning and while I was teaching myself to play like certain songs, individual songs, I had this mnemonic up on the wall for the bass, which is Eva 8 Dynamite Good. And one of the reasons that I really wanted to learn how to play the bass, well, it's my favorite instrument. I always hear it in a song first, but I also just think it's really badass whenever I see like a woman playing one. So something about this mnemonic spoke to me, and I wanted to try to use it to translate the way I feel about the instrument. And also, I just feel like it kind of is reflective of the tone of the year as well. Bass. Eva 8 Dynamite Good, like a tear gas brigade on a runaway night. I'm gonna start over. Bass. Eva 8 Dynamite Good, like a tear gas brigade on a runaway night. Her genre, black meadow. Her sound, maroon. Her imitators, pale as any cloud in the versal world. Eva already done got down. Eva already done got it worked out. Like a remedy for terror in our new carceral courtyard. My favorite little agitator, my pluck, my thread of mine. Eva ain't dim gas. Evil ain't devil ain't dust, always dropping goods. Eva always grieving drums. Goodness gracious, Eva 8. Eva 8. Eva 8 Dynamite Good. Eva armed defense, Garland departed genealogy, escort, slide notes, paraffin, fret fingers. Eva 8 doggone. All right, thank y'all so much.
Thank you so very much. What a wonderful way to spend a Thursday evening. I would just like to welcome the audience into the conversation. I'm Takia C. Graham, and I'm joined on camera with Makalani Bandele and Joy Priest, who you all have just had the pleasure of listening to their dynamic, moving poetry. And so I have a question to start our conversation off, and then I'm going to invite the audience to ask a few questions, and if not, then I have some more things I would like to know. But we heard in the introduction that Dan said that you are both Affrilachian poets or Affrilachian poets, depending on your dialect. What does that mean to you, and how does that inform your poetics?
Ladies first.
You've been in the game longer.
Okay.
You go ahead.
So for me, what Affrilachian means is it's about bringing visibility about the diverse culture that lives in the Appalachian region, and just the diversity and the complexity of the Appalachian region, the mountain chain running basically the entire eastern seaboard, the entire eastern coast of this country. And it just, it's important to me as a person of color from this region, bring light to the enormous cultural impact that people of color have had in this region. So many important names. I'm not even going to run them down, but technically, for example, Bud Powell was Affrilachian technically. I mean, he, part of his family hails primarily from Southern Virginia and North Carolina, and North Carolina. They migrate, literally while his mother's pregnant with Powell, they migrate to the north from the south. And he's born in the north, but I mean, his family is very much Southern. He grows up in a very much a Southern culture in Jersey and New York City, Thelonious Monk, North Carolina. I mean, so many jazz artists hail from North Carolina and from Georgia. And these are this is the Appalachian region. And that, you know, this culture, it just, you know, people just say like the South, more complexity to it. And for me, talking about being Affrilachian is, talks about that complexity of Black culture, talks about that complexity of the Appalachian culture.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just gonna riff in ways I might not ever have thought about it before. But you know, I'm thinking about like Appalachia being a mountain region, obviously, that, you know, extends from Alabama all the way up to New York. I'm not the best with geography, but I know there's 13 states there. But I'm thinking of like mountainous being like, you know, sort of like this implication of being in the shadow, a mountainous formation creating a shadow in which people live. And you know, I'm from Louisville, which by the way, oh, Makalani, do you remember Club Cedar?
Yeah. Was that on 26? Was that 26 in Broadway? Yeah, I remember Club Cedar.
I was thinking about that when I wrote when I did that collaboration with the artists, and I was thinking about the wood panel in the bar and the old men at the bar and they glasses. Anyway, so I'm from Louisville, and obviously that's not like technically in the Appalachian region, but I think I've been particularly thinking about this year as you know, people keep asking me like, with the book coming out and it being like a very Louisville book, like what are your thoughts on Breonna Taylor and, you know, what's happening in your city and things like that. And I said, like I try to get at this idea that one of the things I was thinking about in writing the book and trying to articulate the feeling knowledge of this community was that it often can feel like you're living in obscurity as a Black person in Kentucky. Like there's like this inside joke that's like, well, Black people the rest of America don't even know Black people live in Kentucky. And it's like, Louisville Black as hell. You know, especially if you're from a certain area and ain't never been out of that area, ain't never been out of your square block radius, you know. And so that's one of the things I think about how I identify with it. But also my grandparents and all the ancestors beyond them were from Moton, Alabama, which is in the Appalachian region. And a lot of that culture informs, you know, people argue whether Louisville's a southern city or a Midwestern city. It's obviously technically southern, but it's also, I think sometimes that's split racially. Like Black people feel I think Black Kentuckians, Black Louisvillians feel very southern. White Louisvillians might identify as Midwestern, but I think a big part of that is like the Great Migration and our ancestors coming up from the South, and that southernness still being a part of our upbringing in Louisville. Whether that's food, accent, music, whatever, or these little word studies I'm doing. So I have this phrase in a poem about my great aunt being from a place miles deep into the crop. So also like being from one of those places in the shadow.
Yeah, I've neglected to mention, but as you did, but the way the Affrilachian poets look at Appalachia is we look at the feeder cities as well. Like, you know, like we're both from Louisville, but Louisville is a feeder city. Many people, because of the economic situation in the mountainous region, there not being the economic opportunity. There's a constant flow and flux of people from the mountainous region to like the feeder cities like Louisville and Cincinnati and Nashville. So, and even really to some extent, like something like Chicago, you wouldn't even think that, but there's like a serious there were, you know, in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, there were like caravans. There were people would, you know, drive back and forth between Chicago and Dayton and Toledo, where they had manufacturing jobs, and then on the weekends they would go back home to Appalachia. So yeah, I mean, my family's from Danville, which is the same town that Frank is from. My father's from Danville. My mother's from Springfield. So like, you know, my roots are very much, you know, in like the rural part of Kentucky, which like foothills of Appalachia.
Thank you both for such thoughtful answers. And I think that you give us not only a history lesson and a geography lesson in your words, but you also offer a path for people who will come behind you, right? And being able to lay this sort of poetic landscape that is, it looks backward, it's also contemporary, but it's also, we can see Black folks in the future. We do have a question from Writers and Books Executive Director, Allison Myers. This is for Joy. She says, Joy, I love hearing you read. Do traditional forms inform your poems? I hear echoes of traditional as well as inventive forms in your work, which demand and reward close listening. So much music, line break, tempo, line break, gorgeous rhythms of everyday speech. So do traditional forms inform your poems, Joy? And then you can answer this too, makalani.
Well, thank you, Allison, and thank you for reading the line break. Well, so in the book, I really run through almost all of the received forms. And that's probably because I started, like I would wrote poems when I was a kid, but I started craft study with Frank X as a junior and undergrad, because I was actually a journalism major, and he was the president of NABJ, and he was my advisor. One of my advisors for that. And after a meeting one night, I was like, well, I write poems too. And he was like, okay, well, let me see some. And so I brought him like a whole folder of poems one day. I didn't think he was really gonna read them. And he came back and he said, you got something to say for sure, but you need some craft class. So like the next semester, I signed up for his class and Nikki's class. And his class was just like intro to poetry. Like it was just like, you know, I didn't know there was this whole world of craft there. So like we wrote like, basically the assignments were all like received forms that semester. So a good portion of those graduated into mature poems that made it into the book. So you'll have those received forms in there. But I would say like, I'm probably fucking with all of them in terms that they don't really maintain the traditional form. And I think that is a very Affrilachian Poets thing as well. Like, you know, Makalani, Keith S. Wilson, Mitchell L.H. Douglas, like all these poets are always they're so inventive, like inventive as a style. So I'm highly influenced by
them. So I guess I almost see myself in some ways as like a new formalist. Both of my books have a lot of traditional form in that. And that a lot of that has to do with thinking in terms of thinking like jazz is actually a very formal art. People think it's just all improvisation, but there's, you know, all jazz songs are built on, at least in what we would say like straight ahead or ragtime or whatever. Anything that's not like free jazz is primarily has a theme, or in jazz sometimes called a head, and it's based on one of the forms of popular music, either like something like a 12-bar blues, you know, or 16-bar blues sometimes, like a jazz composition would be based on that, or like a 32-bar music frame. And so the head is, you know, every jazz song starts off with that kind of head or that melody. And then from there, the improvisation, it launches into improvisation. So for me, like form, I wanted to attack these poems that that I'm trying to really like, you know, transpose or try to bring the feel of jazz music into the poem. So form, using traditional form, and even using invented forms of my own and forms invented by other poets. Almost every poem in this collection is, you know, some kind of form or some kind of, as Joy was saying, like a word study. I was doing more so like move studies. Like there was a particular poetic move that I just wanted to try to experiment with and kind of play with it and make sure that like several times it showed up in the poem. So even though like I wasn't particularly like writing with you know, the strictures of what's, you know, what some forms are, like some traditional forms or some invented forms, but I was still giving myself like particular instructions for the poem. Like before I wrote it, I said, okay, like, you know, this is going to be 15 lines, you know, this is going to be, I'm going to have like, you know, 4 metaphors in this poem. There's going to be, you know, a smell image. There's going to be an image that appears to sight or sound. I'm going to make sure that there, you know, there's somewhere in the poem, there is like repetition. I'm going to repeat like a phrase over and over, like 3 or 4 times it'll show up in the poem. So even before I've written the poem, like I already know, like, these are the things I'm going to try to do in the poem. So even when it's not like quote unquote strict form, I'm still a lot of times when I'm writing poems, I'm putting, even before I write down a word, I'm deciding like, this is what I'm going to attempt to do in this poem. These are the kind of poetic moves I'm going to try to do in the poem.
Thank you very much. We only have a few more minutes, and I know we want to end with both of you having an opportunity to close out with a poem. But Makalani, I want to say that when Joy began her piece and throughout her reading, she paid a lot of homage to you. She talked about the ways that you influenced her and the impact you've had on her writing. I would like to give you an opportunity to pay that gift back and share with her what her writing and hearing her words mean to you and how that influences what you do and how you see yourself as a poet.
So it's incredible how central women are to my work and even to like the Affrilachian poets. I mean, it's cliche to say that Black women are, you know, the foundation of African American community and African American social life, and really everything is watered and nourished by what Black women do. Joy's work is so profoundly evocative. That she creates with the images that she puts together, and the kind of rhythm that of ideas and kind of image that from her poems are incredibly inspiring, and it's something that it's a craft that I don't feel like I have much facility with. And so I'm always trying to learn from poets like her that do that image work that really puts you in that place and really gives you that that feeling that they're trying to give you. Like, they're not trying to tell you that they feel sad, or they're not trying to tell you that she feels a certain type of way. She expresses that from that. I remember one time, I think 2 NaPoMo's ago, or National Poetry Months ago, I sent out over our Affrilachian listserv a prompt And Joy answered it and wrote a poem. And it was a poem about, and I think that poem might have ended up in Horsepower, but that the poem was about an experience that she had like with a boyfriend. And the imagery, I'll never forget like how she talked about like basically sitting on the hood of the car, and she's bringing in like her experiences of nature in a poem. I think there's a dead animal carcass, and like the way that she crafted that image and where it was placed perfectly within the rhythm of the poem, like you knew right then and there, like from that dead carcass, sense of the kind of like foreboding and the uncomfortableness of this relationship with the male that is in the poem. So yeah, I mean, but you felt it. I can't really describe it, but because it's something that is experienced in a poem, and I think that's what you want to do in poems, is you want to make people have words. I'm reading words off a page, but yet like I feel this in my body. My mind is consumed with it. I see it in my head. I mean, yeah. So that's what she does, and I'm studying her work, trying to figure out how to do that better myself.
Well, the teacher is in session. Joy, please. Thank you, Makalani, for that wonderful talk back to your friend, your sis, your fellow Affrilachian or Affrilachian. I'm about to get French up in here, poet. Joy, please grace us with some of your beautiful poetry so we can do as you say in this quote from one of Makalani's poems, quote, "Love sing a woman how she sees herself in getting out of the goddamn way. So let me get out of your way so you can poet us."
Thank you so much for that. So I'll just go ahead and read that poem. That poem is called Junker. Junker. That one smelled like a Bradford pear, you said. Oh, wait a minute. A Bradford pear. A Bradford pear is a particular kind of tree, you must know. And it's the tree that you smell in the spring that smells like pussy. Junker. That one smelled like a Bradford pear, you said. Set it in the glade of Broken Down. After we passed over, the skunk pulled back to its muscle and stayed silent about it. Set it leant against the hood, lacing the air with smoke. Under the morning dove and its residual rain, said you liked it. Primal, you called it. Didn't my fingertips glitter with neon dust the whole time? I was a young Tinkerbell. Sometimes I miss her, pollinating everything. Nostalgia is a tease like honeysuckle. The scent never lasts. Dear cricket, in the clearing broad day, you bring it all back. I remember my lips curling from my teeth, dipping lazy into navy leather seats cutting, clitoris budding into a small fruit. Stay there. Don't rush it. Too soon that Chevy will be a memory resting in the yard.
Zoom has to find a way to caption exhales and inhales, and I'm sitting up here wrapped up in that blanket of words. So thank you, sister. I was in the headspace before I got on Zoom, and you have definitely helped me erupt from myself. So I appreciate you. Makalani, we're going to give you the last chance to poet for us tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Joy. Thank you, Dan, and Writers and Books and Ampersand Books. Thank you again for this opportunity to give me and Joy a chance to read together. It's been great. I'm gonna end out with another unit. This is unit 123, and this is written with the JavaScript computer program that I wrote to basically basically, I gave it the rules of the form, the unit form, the 16 sentences, the first sentence and the sixth sentence combined, the words in that sentence combined to create the 12. So I gave the computer in JavaScript code the rules, and then I just created a database and put like, you know, hundreds of sentences in there, and I would just run the program, and I would run it until I found a unit that like where, you know, it sounded good. I wouldn't edit it or anything. So this is unedited. This is what the computer code spit out. Unit 123. The sentence makers love to shut it down. Hands just out of reach of one another. The hands are subconscious things that signal we are feeling, signal what we are feeling. Release the sentences. Hard choices. Use up your last bit of gas, keeping the car you are living in warm, or use it to go look for a job in the morning. Read this or die stupid as fuck. In a direction contrary to the natural one, especially contrary to the apparent course of the sun or counterclockwise. Considered as unlucky or causing disaster. Got your wig on tight? The faintest spray of blood splayed from cheek to ear. A little black girl in the back seat just watched a man in blue with a badge shooter gentle father just inches from her. Evanescent like sugar maple leaves on a bough in autumn, or the idea that whiteness is superior. Point well taken. If you don't know, now you know. Shut it down, especially contrary clockwise disaster. Quick apprehension of the concept as the beginning of stupidity. White buttercups neatly folded away for the night. Not as advertised. Now, when we get up in here, you play the back. Joe Pepe et al. Will do all the heavy lifting.
We got to find a way to give some snaps and claps in our Black Poetry Planet here tonight. You have listened to Joy Priest and Makalani Bandele. They were bringing you straight from Affrilachian some dynamic poems. My name is Takia C. Graham. On behalf of Writers and Books, I would like to tell you, please visit ampersand.org so that you can purchase both of their new books, as well as stay updated on any other things that they have coming. Also, please join Makalani Saturday, I believe, but you can go to wab.org to find out how you can register for his workshop. It is called Out There, Strategies and Possibilities for Experimenting in Black Verse. Thank you all so very much. Make sure that you sign up for a membership at writersandbook.org or sign up just for the newsletter so you can stay abreast of all these great poetic renderings and find out how you can support the programming. Thank you so very much. Have a wonderful night.